In this video, we will be going over how to factor quadratics that have a leading coefficient of 1. Just as a reminder, a quadratic is something of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. And in this case, a is what we refer to as the leading coefficient. So if we look over down at example 1, it says x squared minus 11x plus 24. So let's identify each of the components. In this case, the a value is equal to 1. Since x squared does not have a coefficient in front of it, we know the coefficient to be 1. b is equal to the coefficient of our x term. So the number that's in front of x is negative 11. And then lastly, c is what we call our constant term, and in this case that is 24. So when we factor something, our goal is to write it in the form x plus or minus some number times x plus or minus some other number. And the way that we're going to do that is called the x method. So what we do is we create an x, we draw a big X, and then at the top, we are going to place our b value, which is negative 11, and on the bottom, we're going to place our c value, which is 24. So on the top, we placed our b value, and on the bottom, we placed our c value. Now, our goal from here is to find two numbers that add to our b value and multiply to our c value. And the way that I personally remember this is I like the musical artist Bad Bunny. And so that's how I remember that I need to find two numbers that add to negative 11 or the b value because of Bad Bunny. So two numbers that add to negative 11 and multiply to 24 are negative 8 and negative 3. So what that means is our original expression, we can factor that into x minus 8 times x minus 3. And one way that we can check our answer is correct is multiply out the factored form using a method called foiling. Now, if you've heard of foiling before, it is an acronym. It stands for first, outer, inner, last. And so what that tells us to do is we want to multiply our first two terms together, which is x squared, our second or our outer two terms together, x times negative 3 is minus 3x, our inner two terms together, negative 8 times x is minus 8x, and then our last two terms together, negative 8 and minus 3, if we multiply those, give us positive 24. Now, both of these terms are like terms, so we can combine them, and that gives us x squared minus 11x plus 24, which, if you look, is our original expression. So I can put a big check mark, and that shows that we factored this correctly. Now that we have verified that we factored correctly, I'm just going to go ahead and box my final answer. Example 2 says n squared minus 9n plus 8. Don't let the fact that we are now dealing with the variable n throw you off. It works the same way that we did previously in example 1. Okay, so I'm going to create my x, and I know that the b value is negative 9, so that goes on top, and our c value is positive 8, that goes on bottom. So I want to find two numbers that add to b and multiply to c. And the two numbers that do that for us are minus 8 and minus 1, because if I add negative 8 plus negative 1, that gives me negative 9, and negative 8 times negative 1 gives me positive 8. That tells me that this is going to factor into n minus 8 times n minus 1. Example 3 says n squared plus 16n plus 63. So if I go ahead and identify, I know that A equals 1, B equals 16, and C equals 63. So if I go back and I make my x, I am looking for two numbers that add to 16 and multiply to 63. All right, so the two numbers that are going to satisfy those requirements are 9 and 7, because 9 plus 7 is 16, and 9 times 7 is 63. So therefore, this will factor into n plus 9 times n plus 7. Example 4 says n squared minus 2n minus 15. Let's identify a is equal to 1, b is equal to negative 2, and c, our constant term, is negative 15. So if I make my x, I'm going to put negative 2 on the top and negative 15 on the bottom, and I want to find two numbers that add to negative 2 and multiply to negative 15. Okay, so the two numbers that are going to do that for us are negative 5 and positive 3. Therefore, our original expression will factor into n minus 5 times n plus 3.